Hi, I'm Mr. Dio. I'm a chemistry teacher, and welcome to Mr. Dio's chemistry lab. Today we'll talk about a few laboratory techniques, and there are 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them that we'll be talking about today. So the first one, if you want to find out what the density of a liquid is, you can go through a laboratory process where you can find out the mass of the substance, the volume, and you can do a calculation and figure out what the density of the liquid is. But here's an easy way of doing it. I have here a graduated cylinder filled with water, and I have a hydrometer. So I just put my hydrometer into the liquid, and it settles, it bobs up and down, and it settles down finally to 1.00 gram per cm cube. So that tells me immediately that the density of water is 1.00 gram per cubic centimeter. Okay? So that's the first thing that you can do. Number 2. If you are preparing a solid and the solid has some moisture in it, it's wet, and you want to dry it, you can use what's called a desiccator. So the desiccator has a desiccant, in this case white pellets, and the desiccant is a substance that will absorb water. Remember when you were buying, or when you probably bought your shoes or a camera, you had a little packet that says, do not eat, silica gel. So you have a white substance that's similar to that substance, or it could be identical to that substance. So I have a little platform in here, and I have my container, and I have an evaporating dish, and I have some copper sulfate that I prepared in class earlier. So you leave this, if you leave this around for a little bit, the water is going to be absorbed. The water is going to be absorbed here, and the copper sulfate is going to be dry. So this is called a desiccator, and it's a way of removing moisture from a substance that was prepared in the laboratory. Now the third technique we'll talk about today is using this little gadget over here, and this one is interesting. If you have a substance that's a suspension, and I do have a substance that's a suspension here, and I want to make sure that I get the solid to fall to the bottom. If I leave it on its own, it's probably going to take a long time to happen. So it's going to fall and precipitate, but it's going to take a while. So if I wanted to speed up the whole process, I use a centrifuge. So what I do, I have 2 identical test tubes, one filled with tap water and one filled with my mixture with a suspension. Put them both in a centrifuge, and I turn my centrifuge on. Okay? All right, it spins around. Shake the entire table over here. And it's still spinning. And sometimes the suspension will change, in that the solid actually falls to the bottom of the test tube on the first try, or sometimes you have to keep doing it. So it takes a little bit, probably a little bit more spinning for the solid to actually fall to the bottom, and that's showing you the use of the centrifuge. The last thing I'll show you today is how to do filtration. Now, I have a simple filtration apparatus. I have an Erlenmeyer flask, also called a conical flask. I have a plastic funnel, and I have a piece of filter paper inside of the funnel. So if you had a mixture, a solid and liquid mixture, you can actually pour your mixture in. Now I'll just use water, and I just use tap water. And what's going to happen is that the water will go down slowly, and it's going to be pulled down simply by gravity. Now it's probably going to take a long time for all of this to be filtered. So you're left with your residue, you have your filtrate inside of an Erlenmeyer flask. Over here you have a different setup. In this case you have a Buckner funnel, you have an Erlenmeyer flask with a side arm, it's sticking out over here, you have rubber tubing, and it's attached to this little gadget that's connected to my water supply. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to pour some water in. I'll pour some water over here. There's a filter paper, and I'll show you what's going to happen once I turn on this water supply over here. speeds up the whole process of filtration because this is the method of suction filtration. As the water is actually going downwards, it's pulling air from the tubing, and the air is pulled out from inside of the flask, which causes the liquid to be sucked into the early mile flask. So this is a much faster process using suction filtration as compared to gravity filtration. All right, so just as a quick summary, I showed you to use a hydrometer in order to figure out the density. I showed you to use a desiccator in order to dry a solid that was prepared in a laboratory experiment. We talked with a centrifuge. If you have a suspension, you want to make sure that you get your precipitate down at the bottom very quickly in your test tube. You can use your centrifuge. And lastly, we talked with gravity filtration as compared to suction filtration.